To other news now. Domestic abusers leaving prison will have to wear electronic monitoring tags, and offenders who pose a threat to a former partner or children being banned from going within a certain distance of those homes. Well, the government says the pilot scheme will offer better protection for the victims, and it's being launched in the Midlands, but then expected to be introduced across all of England and Wales next year. We can speak now to Rachel Williams, who's a domestic abuse survivor and campaigner at Stand Up to Domestic Abuse. Rachel, thank you for speaking to us once more. Clearly, this is a pretty effective measure at locating where people are, but I guess the worry would be that, you know, they are still at large if they're released from prison, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, we know we can't keep them locked up forever, so we do have to put these measures in place. My only concern is that, you know, will there be the consequence when the terms and conditions of that tag is breached? Because we know domestic abusers, when they do breach their restraining orders and their license conditions, there is no consequence at the moment, and that is why they keep on breaching the orders, because they're not held accountable for their actions. You know, you're asking somebody who's not a decent member of society to all of a sudden adhere to rules and conditions, and they're not going to want to do it.
And do we know in this pilot scheme who will and how those tags will be monitored? You know, would the police intervene if they get within a certain distance of that particular home, for instance?
Well, I'd like to hope so, Mark. You know, normally I think the tags, as I'm led to believe, used to be put in place by G4, but hopefully the police will be able to act swiftly when there is a breach of a tag.
Yeah, and how would this differ from a restraining order, which, of course, they can already put in place?
Well, with a restraining order, you're relying on the victim to actually notify the police that the breach has taken place, or a member of the community. Whereas a tag, it actually lets the user, you know, the person who's operating the tags know that they are within that boundary. But
I guess, you know, an important reassurance for many who feel that, you know, the threat re-emerges once people are released from prison.
Yeah, and that's something that victims carry all the time. You know, they're never sort of free from an offender, only when they are locked up. And also, you know, we're saying that about this scheme that's stopping offenders in prison from writing to their victims and survivors of the abuse. And we do know that letters do get out. They address it to their sisters or somewhere else. And we know, you know, that I don't think the prisons have actually got the capacity to be monitoring every single letter that goes out and checking against the data that they got, that they're not able to write to that person. So, you know, we need the manpower, but the government is putting that forward, which is great. Long overdue. I mean, this is something we've been banging on for years about, but there's got to be a consequence. But you do think the government is taking the issue more seriously now? Well, I hope so. And I think, you know, by doing this, then it is showing that they are sort of putting things in place, but there's a lot more to do. And I mean, I can talk about stuff that I'm not happy with within the judiciary, but that's for another time. But it is a step in the right direction. OK, I think we'll be getting you back then to talk about that. But for the moment, Rachel, on the issue of the tags, thank you very much indeed for updating us with your reaction.